Hey everyone, it's Adrian from the Pageant Project. My next guest is Marisa Brown, who is Miss Capital City Volunteer. She will be competing for the title of Miss South Carolina Volunteer this July. She is a rising senior at the University of South Carolina in Columbia, majoring in mass communications with a cognate in health, promotion, education, and behavior. She is also double minoring in dance and entrepreneurship. At just 9 years old, Marisa developed an eating disorder, a struggle that resurfaced at 19 as a result of unhealthy approaches to fitness and wellness. Her disorder robbed her of many things, including her joy, which had always been one of her most defining qualities. It wasn't until she began her recovery at 19 that she fully understood the physical and emotional toll she had endured. Determined to reclaim control, she made the decision to stop letting food dictate her life. From that turning point came her Serve initiative, Fueling Freedom, Healing Our Relationships with Food. The mission of Fueling Freedom is to help young girls and women understand eating disorders, recognize the body's need for nourishment, and develop a kinder relationship with both their bodies and their minds. Marisa believes that true beauty begins within. When someone knows who they are and is confident in their accomplishments, they begin to see and appreciate their outer beauty. Through Fueling Freedom, she is working to make this vision a reality, empowering young women to align their heads and hearts and take the first step toward healing, because it all starts in the mind. Well, Marisa, you are keeping up the tradition of all the Miss Volunteer America girls having really, really long resumes to read out. How are you? Welcome.
I'm pretty good. This morning, I've been very busy today. Starting the week, I went to Greenville, South Carolina, which is right near Spartanburg, which is where I'm from, which is actually where my state pageant is going to be held. And I went for some interview practice, some swimsuit walking practice, and some talent practice as well. And I did all of that in 1 hour. So it was kind of like crazy. And then, had to head back here to Columbia.
You weren't doing them all at the same time. Were you doing your interview practice whilst in swimsuit and gown? I mean, 1 hour is a pretty compressed time schedule.
Yeah, so we split it up into 30 minutes, 30-minute increments. So 30 minutes
Yes.
was spent on interview, and then probably like 20 minutes was spent on swimsuit, and then the remaining 10 minutes was on talent.
I think I need to visit South Carolina at some stage. It's like my favorite state that I've never visited. I've gradually been ticking them off the list, but I have a good friend who lives in Spartanburg. And the pageant is being held. I think it's being held on my birthday because
Really?
Maddie Kaufman's dad invited me to watch Handover, and he said July 26th. I'm like, that's my birthday, which is odd. And my friend lives on Canterbury Road. I don't know if that means anything to you. Apparently, that's in
Yeah.
Spartanburg. But can you just, as a start, obviously we've got a lot to dive into. Tell me a bit more about South Carolina.
Yeah, so I live in Columbia, South Carolina, because I go to USC. Go Cox. I'm a senior, so it's kind of, surreal. I don't think it's really like hit home yet that I'm graduating in May,
Yeah.
but Columbia is actually the midpoint in South Carolina. So if you go an hour and a half up north, then you'll hit Spartanburg, Greenville, the upstate area. And then an hour and a half south will be Myrtle Beach and Charleston. So either way is the
Right.
mountains or the beach.
Right. And what is South Carolina most known for?
We actually produce more peaches than
I've
Georgia.
heard this one. Yep.
Yep. Yep. So in Gaffney, which is in the upstate, we actually have a big statue of a peach. Yeah, which is pretty interesting.
A
Hmm.
statue of a peach.
Yes. Hmm.
How big is how big? I mean, I shouldn't laugh. Here in Australia, we have the big banana, which you can take a photo in front of, and it's probably 30, 40, 50 foot across. How big is this statue of a peach?
It's pretty big. I mean, I would say I think it surpasses like the height of a restaurant, and you can like see
Wow.
it off on the interstate. Yeah, it's big. People
Okay,
take
so then
pictures in front of it. So,
what's your opinion of Georgia peaches? Then I mean, Georgia is known as a peach state. There must be some rivalry with fruit going on here.
yeah, I don't know. I used to like peaches a lot when I was little, but now it's more like apples and bananas. I'm a really big banana fan, so I would love to see the banana statue.
Okay, well, you can come over to Australia. It's literally called the Big Banana. It's massive. Um,
Yeah.
before we dig into some of the stuff that you got here, obviously I send you over the talking points you'd like to discuss, and I have to center on. You have one that's in capitals, capital letters, all caps, with exclamation marks after it. Do you remember what topic this was?
Is it is it Marvel?
No, no,
No.
it's coffee.
Oh my goodness, of course. Coffee is literally my favorite beverage. I like it way better than water. So what do you want to know?
Why are you so excited about it? I mean, I'm a big coffee person, so anytime someone says they're interested in coffee, I need to ask. So, what is it about coffee? I mean, is it the buzz in the morning? Do you like trying different coffee beverages? Do you know all the facts about coffee?
Yeah, I honestly just love the taste of coffee. When I was little, I used to sit on my granddad's lap and just drink it straight out of the cup, black. But yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty intense. And I was like 3 or 4 years old. So I got a taste of coffee at a very, very young age. And ever since then, I kind of like, took a break from it and then I started getting back into it. And I really like Starbucks coffee, but I
Right.
also love Seven Brew. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
Oh, what's that?
So Seven Brew is a drive-through coffee shop, and it was actually started in Alabama.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's really good, and they have their seven originals, and I'm gonna try to name all of them. I don't know if I can, so here it goes. We've got the blondie, the brunette, the German chocolate, the sweet and salty, the white chocolate, and then there's one or two more.
You got five of them. So, are you still taking? I mean, it's very unusual at 3 or 4 years old to be enjoying the taste of black coffee. Are you still? Do you still enjoy black coffee now? Because most of the Americans that I know, when they say they love coffee, it's some mocha chocolate coffee thing with 5 inches of whipped cream and a caramel syrup, and like, where's the coffee? So, do you
Yeah.
still like black coffee, or you are now converted to the more like, where is the coffee type of coffees?
I've converted to the more like I like the taste of the sweetness of like the creamer and the syrups. But I'll tell you what I get from Starbucks.
Yeah.
So I used to like hate cold brew. And so cold brew is actually made differently than
Mm.
regular coffee. So the beans are actually they sit in water for like I think a couple of hours, maybe 7 or 8, and then that's why it's so much more concentrated and it's got way more caffeine in it than regular coffee because it sits for a really long time. And so from Starbucks, I get a venti cold brew with half and half creamer, 3 pumps of sugar-free vanilla syrup, and then 1 pump of white mocha.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I might have to give that one a try the next time
Yeah.
I'm over there. I do like cold brew. We have that over here. Sometimes I think they brew it overnight. And the first time I tried it, it was unusual because it's cold first off. And normally, as someone who's enjoyed black coffee, you don't normally want your black coffee cold. But it does have a different taste. It's a bit smoother, and as you said, it tastes a bit more concentrated. But just moving on from that, I mean, coffee, as I said, when you're 3 or 4 years old, most people aren't going to enjoy coffee. Did you have unusual tastes in other food and beverages when you were that age?
Yeah, actually I did. My grandfather grew fig trees in his backyard and I would eat the figs when I was like I think 5 or 6. Yeah, and I would eat tomatoes like they were apples. And one time I thought that an orange was a grapefruit, so I like bit into it and it was super bitter. I was like, "Ooh, this doesn't taste good." So, yeah, I would say I was kind of, I had some weird taste as a kid.
It's like a pretty healthy upbringing, though, compared to some of the other things I've been hearing about fried this, fried that. I mean, it sounds like you actually had fresh fruit, which is
Yeah.
a pretty healthy choice.
Mhm. I did.
Can you? So you've written here that when you were 9 years old, you developed an eating disorder. So I'm imagining this was before your pageant days,
Mhm.
and so
Way before.
pageantry. Yeah, all right. So let's get into this. I mean, pageantry gets a bad rap, as do quite a lot of other things like modeling and dancing. Well, maybe not bad rap, but sometimes undeserved and sometimes deserved, depending on which way you look at it, for sort of causing or fostering an environment that promotes sort of disordered eating. So going back to nine, I mean, nine is pretty early from my experience developing it. Do you remember how it started?
Yes, so a family member of mine actually commented on my weight. Yep, and that is actually what started it, and that's why I'm very selective of how I say to others. And eating disorders are actually genetic. Also, there's a genetic factor that plays into it. I'm not quite sure like how much of a percentage is like brought into it, but also environment is too. So how you're brought up, how your mom or your dad, how they talk about their physical appearance as well, how your siblings do. So yeah, it was very I just remember it being a comment about my body, and then from then on, that's when I started, like, my eating disorder habits.
I mean, it's. I had a comment from a sports teacher when I was around about that age, the fact that I threw like a girl. And he didn't mean it as a compliment, by the way.
Mhm.
And it's funny because even all these years later, I still remember that. I wouldn't say it controls me in any way, but I still remember it.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting to me that you remember that one singular comment. Do you remember, was it just that one comment that seemed to hit home, or was it sort of a few comments that led up to that, and then that was the one that sort of broke the camel's back?
I think it was just that one comment. Yeah, it was just that one comment. She commented on how, I think it was like how I was quote unquote like putting weight on. But I
Right.
was 9 years old, and
Yeah.
the average age for someone who develops an eating disorder is 16. So
Yeah.
I was super, super young. And I had it for 3 years. And then it relapsed 7 years later. How to do the math there.
Right. Can you, and obviously you don't have to go into all the details because it can be quite personal, but can you just describe the journey that you went through with the eating disorder? Because very often it's not, it's like mental health in a lot of ways. In fact, a
Mm.
lot of it is psychological. It's like you're never completely cured. It's always something that you need to be a bit mindful of relapsing, and there's certain things that can trigger you. I mean, you started at nine, so you started very early. And then you said you relapsed. So can you just trace the overall journey of what it was like?
Yeah. So from 9 to 12, I would eat very little. At lunch, I would have like 8 grapes or one apple and like maybe one sandwich. And that was only like, it was only 8 grapes. And I'm not saying like all together, it was only like 8 grapes for lunch one day. And that's all I would eat. And then the next day would be a sandwich. And my best friend, who's still my best friend to this day back home, she was very concerned, and she was like, Mercer, are you okay? Like, you're not eating all that much. And I was like, oh, I'm fine, it's all right, like, I'm okay. And so when I was 12, I weighed about 67 pounds. Yeah, when I was 12 years old, and I went to therapy. But it did not stick because I thought that I went to therapy for a different issue that I was having.
Mm.
Because I was bullied in middle school, by guys actually, which is, that stings a little bit more than girls.
Yeah.
And it was mostly on my appearance, so that had to do something with it as well. And so around 13, 14, 15, I started going to food for comfort rather than like not eating it. I wouldn't say it was a full-blown binge eating disorder, but I would just eat like whatever I could or whatever I felt like and however much I wanted. And then like that would just be it. And then 16 years old, 17, 18, I think I was pretty fine. I was eating fairly healthy. I was eating pretty balanced. And then when I turned 19, 18, 19 is college.
Mm.
And my first year competing in a pageant, I was 19 years old. So I was first starting out in college, and I went to a trainer. My first time going to a physical trainer, and he put me on a meal plan.
Yeah.
And I was essentially eating the diet that a 12-year-old would eat. So I was only eating lean meats, veggies, and like low carbs. And that was
Yeah.
literally for 4 months straight. So I dropped 20 pounds in 4 months. My parents were very concerned. They were,
Mm.
asking me, they were like, hey, like, are you sure this is the right way to do it? Like, you can have, a little piece of cake or like a little bite of
Yeah.
cake. And I was like, no, like, I cannot do that. And I'm very type A, like, and I'm a very hard worker. That is something with me. That's definitely a trait in me. Um, that's honestly probably one of my best is when I see a goal, like with winning, wanting to win the South Carolina Volunteer.
Yeah.
I am very persistent, and so I will do. I mean, I'm not. I back then I was going to do anything to get my
Yeah.
body to that point, just because like I was very new to it and I really didn't have, a grasp as to who I was. So I was going to like people for it. And I was also, I would say I was going to food as well. And
Mm.
yeah, literally like however I felt that day about my body was how much I was, cognitively worthy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so after I competed in my first pageant at 19, I gained all the weight back and even
Hmm.
more. So I hated how I looked. I didn't feel too good. And like every single time I would eat, I would just like not feel good at all.
Yeah.
And then that's when I met, I'm sure you've heard of Morgan Morgan.
Hmm.
Yep. So she is also my trainer as well. And she's the national sponsor for Miss Volunteer America.
Yeah.
And so I met her at someone's like homecoming and I told her my story and I was like, I hate how I look, I hate how I feel. I want to feel confident again and I want to feel like myself again. And she
Hmm.
shared her story with me and she was like, Marissa, we're going to get you back on track. And like ever since then, like it's been an insane like journey.
Mm.
So that was I started training with her in October of 2023. And so from then on, like I've lost a good amount of weight, but it's been over time and it's
In a
been
healthy,
realistic.
sustainable way. Yeah.
Right, right. And I've developed, and because of that, because of her training and like and she knows that like I'm super hard on myself, and like
Hmm.
she knows that, so she knows she has to encourage me a little bit more. She was like, Marissa, like you're slaying, like you look so good.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, just I've completely healed my relationship with food. And I know earlier on our call you said that it's an everyday battle, which it is. Like it's an everyday choice to wake up and either love yourself or honestly hate yourself. And it starts with you. And it is an eating disorder is first and foremost a mental health disorder. And so that's
Yeah.
why I've developed Feeling Freedom, because I want to
Mm.
help young girls and women realize that they are more than their bodies. And as long as they love who they are on the inside and learn what traits they have and what characteristics and attributes make them who they are, then that will be physically manifested on the outside.
I mean, that's an amazing story, number one. And it sounds like you've come a long way, which is, credit to you first off. But as you said, it's a mental health issue, probably first and foremost, an emotional one. And I'm just wondering, like, over the journey that you've had, I mean, this all started with one comment. And very often these comments are not ill intended, if that makes sense. They can actually come from a place of love and care, as strange as that might sound, or they can just be an off the cuff, oh, you've put on a bit of weight, and they don't mean it that way, but you interpret it that way. And with Feeling Freedom, I'm just curious, like, if you were to go back to your 9-year-old self, right at that point that you heard that comment that you still remember to this day, what would you say to that 9-year-old self? Because in this day and age, it's not only adults telling children that, it's like social media has put that on steroids. Every time you
Mm-hmm.
see someone, and it's not even real a lot of the time. It can be airbrushed or
Yep.
AI or Photoshop,
Or
and you're like, oh
pose.
my
Yep.
god, I need to look like that to win a pageant. And it's like, hang on. Not everyone genetically is supposed to look like that. It's about becoming healthy, fit, and strong. And sometimes you'll end up with a stronger, more muscular body, a curvier body. Sometimes you'll be stick thin, but you can't really control that. That's genetic.
Mm-hmm.
So what would your message be to your 9-year-old self, or young girls like that who've maybe heard a comment or seen social media or read a comment on social media? It's like, oh, she's too fat, she needs to lose weight. What would your advice to those younger women be?
I would tell them that they were worth so much more than their physical appearance. And honestly, like how we get to know somebody is when they talk, when they open up their mouths,
Mm.
then we will see their heart. And so that's why I say that as long as like they love who they are on the inside, then that will be physically represented on the outside. And I would also tell them that they don't have to starve themselves or, whether they're a size 2 or a size 22, like they have been fearfully and wonderfully made, and that they should wear that loud and proud. And like God has created them with certain gifts and strengths, and He created their body to be their body. And I think it's so beautiful how, like, none of us were created the same. Everybody has a different DNA pattern, and even like identical twins who look exactly the same have a different DNA genetic pattern, which is it's mind-boggling to me.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that's definitely what I would tell them. And also just like bottom line, whatever, it doesn't matter what social media says or what the words of other people say. It is always a reflection of them and not a reflection of you.
You also help the young women watching or listening differentiate between healthy eating, like getting in shape healthily, and unhealthily. Because I think you'll have a unique perspective on this because you've tried both. You've had experiences with
Yep.
both, and obviously, when you want to get into shape, sometimes yes, there are certain foods you cut out, and you work your butt off at the gym. That's fine. But
Yeah.
there's a line where you cross over, and it's like, hang on, now this is becoming an issue. But for you, how do you draw that line?
Yeah, so for me, what I do is like I have set a calorie deficit. Morgan and I have worked with that. And so let's say if I want, I don't know, like I love ice cream. That's one of the sweet treats that I love. I don't know if you've had them before, but the Sonic Blast. Have you had those?
What
No?
is that?
Okay. Well, they're really good. It's essentially like a milkshake, but you like eat it with a spoon, so it's like kind of
All
thick.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my favorite's the Oreo one. And so like if I want that, then like I would fit that in with my calories for that day. But also I wouldn't, it's the aftermath of that too, of like, choosing to eat that, but then also like realizing that like this isn't gonna, like deter away from my progress. Like it's not gonna really change anything. And like as long as like you have a healthy, balanced diet. So like let's say you have like a protein dense breakfast with eggs, cottage cheese, cheese, and maybe some bacon, then like that's great. And then for lunch, have a salad with some chicken, or because that's what I usually do. Like I'm just naming out like what I usually eat.
You're making me
And
hungry.
then yeah. Yeah, I haven't had dinner yet, so I'm pretty
Okay.
hungry too. Um, and then I usually have chicken tacos for dinner, with like tortilla chips and veggies. And I know I've seen like where you say that Quest Bar should they should
Sponsor
sponsor
Berkeley.
Berkeley. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the legendary protein Pop Tarts should sponsor me because I love the taste of those. Like they're literally so good. And it's got like 20 grams of protein in it.
And you so contrast what you know now about healthy eating versus what you thought it was before.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm not casting any judgment because at 9 years old, like, what would you know? But you said you're like eating 8 grapes on one day. And I think we've come a long way in some ways in terms of knowing what actually is healthy. Like a lot of more protein, less carbs. I always say cut out processed foods for one and stay hydrated, and you're probably 90% of the way there. But can you just compare and contrast your idea or your knowledge of what healthy eating is now versus what you thought it was before, where it almost sounded like I just need to eat almost nothing, just,
Yeah.
eat air and that's healthy. So how much more do you know now?
Yeah, so I would say that for me, like healthy is again, it's all about balance and it's all about,
Yeah.
I usually eat like high protein stuff. So maybe like the Kodiak brand, those like protein breakfast sandwiches,
Mhm.
or and also like I agree with you, like we should cut out processed foods.
Mm.
And that's why I make most of my stuff. And I've actually
Oh, okay.
realized
Yeah.
that when I make my meals at home, I feel better. I don't
Yeah.
feel as like inflamed or anything. And so that's healthy to me. And healthy to me is also not just like what you put in your body, like physically, like the food that you eat, but also like what you put in your mind as well and like how you train your mind. Um, and this is also like I absolutely love to exercise. I love working out. It releases endorphins, which are the happy hormones, and that's why you feel way better after you work out because at first you're like, "Ah, I don't really want to work out." Then you work out and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome. I can like tackle the world." Um
Yeah.
that's why you feel like that is because of the endorphin release. And so that's also a way that I'm healthy as well. And I love to journal. Writing is something that I have loved since I was a child. It used to be creative writing when I was younger, but now
Hmm.
it's more so mindset writing and just like writing about my day and how it was, and then also like mentally, prepping for the pageant, how I feel, and like writing down the portions of the competition and like how I feel about performing in every single one of them.
Yeah.
And then healthy when I was younger, when I was, had my full blown eating disorder at 9. And then even, 2, 3 years ago when I was 19, was, oh, let me eat as little as possible so that I can be as little as possible.
Yeah.
Because, and I honestly think part of the reason why I developed an eating disorder too was because my voice was dimmed and my light was dimmed when I was little. Not a lot of people would listen to me, they wouldn't really look at me. My older sister is someone that they would look to. They would just kind of like push me aside and be like, oh, you're the funny one, like, oh, you're kind of, it's okay, at least she's pretty. Like they would pity me and they would yeah, they wouldn't really, they would be like, oh yeah, she's a great dancer, and that's really and truly all that I thought I had to offer was my dance abilities. But
Yeah.
then as I grew into myself, I was like, there is way more to me than just dance. um and so I would say that that's also part of the reason why I developed one, was because other people were making me smaller. So I thought, therefore, I had to physically be smaller as well and fit into their box. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, first off, with what you said about preparing your meals, I think that's a great thing because I have a friend over in America, and she doesn't. She's gluten intolerant, and when she has any sort of food in America that has gluten, she feels really, really bad about it. But the curious thing, well, she spends a lot of time overseas in places like Europe, like France, and when she has the gluten there, it's fine. And so I think sometimes we don't know how processed the food is, even though it sounds like it should be healthy. But then when you make it yourself, not only do you know what's in it, but I also think that helps with your relationship with food. I think you're less likely to binge it when you've put in the effort to make it yourself, and it almost sort of restarts your relationship in a healthy way, to grab a tomato or to grab that steak or whatever it is you're having. I want to just go back to the pageants for a second. So at some point, I think you said at 19, you decided to enter the pageant, correct? At your first pageant.
Mhm.
And then you had a trainer who gave you some maybe not so great dietary advice. By the way, in Australia, you're expressly forbidden as a personal trainer from giving dietary advice because that's not your qualification. So if you gave advice in a dietary sense, you would be in a lot of trouble because
Oh, wow.
a lot of personal trainers don't know what they're talking about. And so it's interesting to hear that you had that to begin with. But walk me through the process. If someone has either had an eating disorder or is vulnerable to it, and then they want to enter a pageant, I often say you've got to be cautious here. Now, it's not like you shouldn't enter a pageant, and it's not like you should. I'm not saying either way, because I think it's very individual. But walk me through your process, or if you had to guide or coach someone who had had an eating disorder, let's say, what's the process they should go through entering that pageant to make sure that they have a healthy journey?
Yeah, I would honestly, I would ask them why they were entering the pageant in the first place, because a lot of girls' whys is very different. Some just enter it just to have fun. Others enter it for the experience, and others enter it because they want to win. But it's like underneath the surface, like, okay, but what is your why? Like, why are you
Mm,
competing? And your why can change. And I would honestly like make sure that they were good, like mentally, and like had a good mindset on food. And like, I would honestly advise them to develop a very, very healthy relationship with food first before they enter into a pageant, depending on like how, disordered eating or eating disorders look to them
yeah.
when they were growing up, or however they are, like right there and then. And just really seeing like, okay, why this pageant, why this system, what makes this system so special. So
Let's segue into why, the pageant why, because I think that's a great place to start. Let's talk about your why. So obviously you're competing in the Miss Volunteer America, the South Carolina part of it. And then if all things go according to plan, you'll be competing in the national pageant, which is where we happened to cross paths a month or so
yeah.
ago. Can't believe it's already been that long. But what is your why for competing?
So my why has changed, and I'll go into my why first. When I started at 19, I wanted to prove to people that I had a voice, and I wanted to prove people wrong. So there was that, like, words of affirmation. There was that, oh, I'm gonna prove you wrong, and I'm gonna prove that like I have a voice, and I'm gonna use it, and me. But then, when I started getting more into pageantry and like peeling back the layers, I was like, I want to be a voice for others. Not just for myself, and not just advocating for all of the personal growth and the mindset, and just essentially like every single tear that I've cried, and not
Yeah.
just because of that, but also for young girls, for them to realize that they have a voice no matter how small they think it is, and they shouldn't feel the need to make themselves smaller just so that other people can be comfortable around them. Um, and to also advocate for the prevention of eating disorders through my serve initiative, Fueling Freedom, and by targeting the mind and the mental health behind it. And there's also, I did a research paper a couple of months ago in one of my HPEB courses. And something that I learned was that eating disorders are actually tied to different like psychological disorders. So they're
Right.
tied to OCD, they're tied to depression, even schizophrenia. And this, I don't know why it surprised me, but it did. And when I was younger, I had and I think I still do have a little bit of OCD. It's not, as prevalent now as it was before,
Yeah.
but I loved control when I was little. And I think that's also another reason why I developed
Mm,
an eating disorder, was because I loved the control. I loved, seeing, oh, this does this for my body, and like, yay, like I can control how I look through what I eat.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I would say that my why is one, first and foremost, it is about the message of fueling freedom and helping young girls realize that like they're more than their bodies, and loving who they are on the inside, and then that will be physically represented on the outside. But then also, I would say honestly, this is probably, I mean, I don't want to say it's bigger than Fueling Freedom, but it's definitely like the reason why I created Fueling Freedom, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
is to help them discover their voice, what it sounds like, the pitch of it, and for them to, use it, and for them to see that, hey, I do have a place in this world, and God has created me fearfully and wonderfully. Like, He knows, He wove me intricately. He knows He knows my frame very well. Like, He knows who I am. And it's time for others to know who I am too, the true, authentic me. Not someone, not the Marissa that other people wanted me to be, not the Marissa
Yeah.
that, like, you know, other like toxic bad friendships, not that person that what they wanted to be, but the Marissa that God wants me to be is who I'm meant to be. And I want to help young girls find out who they are through using their voice and through Fueling Freedom.
I'll get you to go through more of your plans with Fueling Freedom in a sec. Just want to go back quickly to your research paper where you said it was surprising, but it shouldn't have been. From my experience, I was working as a tennis coach in an all-girls school, and one of our girls developed an eating disorder to the point, to give you an idea, where we had a holiday camp, a training camp, and I had to, confidentially sort of get her to the scales, weigh herself, and if she dropped below a certain weight, she would be taken to an institution. And that was very confronting. And what I want to say is that she was highly intelligent, and it was about control. It wasn't about so much, I need to lose weight. It was about, there were so many things out of her control.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a high achiever, like you said, type A. And she felt like the only thing she could control was what went into her mouth, which again, it's a psychological issue first. Very often it's not just about wanting to look smaller, although sometimes it can be. But very often it's the intelligent and ambitious women who seem to be most vulnerable to it. So I just want to put that out there. When it comes to fueling freedom, what are your ultimate plans with it? Let's take this out a year from now or 2 years or whatever you're comfortable with. What's the long-term vision for yourself with Fueling Freedom?
Long term, I would love to implement a 6-week course into not just high schools in South Carolina, but Lord willing, if I become the national title holder for Miss Volunteer America someday, if it's in the Lord's will for me to win the state title, then for me to take it all across the nation and implement a 6-week course that lists what eating disorders are. So, like, the different types of them. I had anorexia, which is probably what you've gathered. Some people have bulimia and others have orthorexia. And so orthorexia is where you're only focused on eating very, very healthy, very fresh foods. And like that's all you'll eat. You'll never like treat yourself to a sweet treat or anything like that. And so that's what the 6-week course would look like. But it would also look like helping them learn how to prevent them and like the triggers. So they would learn the triggers,
Yeah.
and they would learn the symptoms. So then they would be like, okay, this is how I can prevent it from happening if they are showing symptoms. And most of the symptoms are not, it depends on the type of person and the type of like eating disorder that they're most vulnerable and susceptible to.
Yeah.
So with a person with anorexia, like with me, it's usually not eating a lot, being really, really cold all the time, having very, very low energy. So things like that, that's like the aftermath, but like the symptoms
Mm.
is like, beforehand, it's like you commenting on how you look, your physical appearance and how you feel, or like maybe others are doing that. So that's like, you know, big plan for Fueling Freedom is for it to be, for it to free those who are bound by
Right. Yep.
by the chains, honestly, of eating disorders and of, the prevalence of them. Because I know it's still a taboo subject in our world today, but I know that like mental health issues are becoming more and more prevalent in today's society, and a lot of people are talking about them.
Yeah.
I feel like eating disorders are still like people are like, "Oh, I don't want to push that button." No, I want to push it completely to where nobody has one. Like
Yeah.
nobody, and I know that's not like, I know that I can't, like prevent every single person in the world from having an eating disorder, but as many people as I can impact, I can and I will, because I know the impact that it had on me and how it just took, in my bio, you said that it took away from my joy, which is one of my best traits. If you ask anyone that I know, they will say that, like, I'm one of the most joyful people, very, sunshine, rainbows, bubbly. Um, but that's something that it took away from me. And it doesn't only like, you know, eat away at your physical appearance, but it also eats away at who you are on the inside and
Yeah.
away from your beautiful traits and your beautiful like attributes and characteristics that the Lord has gifted you with. And so I want to like stop the monster before it starts.
Mm.
And that's definitely what fueling freedom is about.
I love that metaphor in the fueling freedom, because that was one thing that I was going to ask. And I think it's great. It's a great idea to kill the monster whilst it's small. Don't wait till it's big and tearing down the city before you try to tackle it.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can never have a perfect world, because at the end of the day, everyone has their choice. We have the freedom
Yeah.
of choice, and so.
Hmm.
But I don't think anything gets better if we don't talk about it. I mean, this
Right.
has certainly been my experience, not only with eating disorders but mental health in general. And I think as a society, we're getting better, but I think we still have a long way to go. And I think eating disorders are probably more taboo now than things like depression or anxiety. It's weird because we tend to get comfortable as a society with certain things first. And so depression, I think there are a lot more people talking about it now. I've talked about it, even darker than that, more severe things like that. I've written a book on that. But I think eating disorders is still on that fringe of being very taboo. And I think it takes someone like yourself who has lived experience with it to help address it. Because, if you go on TikTok and social media, there's a lot of advice out there that's more harmful than beneficial, let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to have lived it to really know what you're talking about. But Marisa, let me ask you something. So you've mentioned your faith, the Lord, several times, and I know it's important to you. I read the Bible from beginning to end during the middle of COVID because I was looking for wisdom. I thought the world was going in a not very good direction, if you can remember what it was like during COVID. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, this book, The Good Book, probably has some wisdom in it because it's been around for thousands of years. And, my recent trip to America, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. But it was really interesting because everything that went wrong literally then had a benefit to it. And I felt like it was God beating me over the head saying, are you getting this message yet? Because you talked about being type A and I'm the same. It's like you do all this planning and preparation because you don't want things to go wrong. And then things go wrong anyway. And you're like, okay, what am I going to do now? And you start to freak out. But I remember pulling over. I hit the curb too hard in my hire car. The tire went completely flat. I ripped it off the wheel. And then I ended up getting help by a homeless person.
Mm-hmm.
And the homeless person flagged down a police officer, and the police officer changed the tire for me. And I've never felt so sort of humble and grateful at the same time. This homeless person, literally, while she was helping me jack up the car, she found a penny on the floor. And she was telling me how happy she was that her and her fiance had found like $3.44 that weekend. And things like that kept happening during my journey. It was like, okay, terrible thing happens, out of your control, but look, there's a huge benefit in it. Let's just say, let's start at a higher level. How would you say that your relationship with God has changed over the years? Let's say back from when you were a child at 9 to where it is now, because it must have undergone a birth, a transformation, a revelation, whatever it was. But can you just trace that journey first off?
Yeah. So I was brought up in the church. I went to church. It's almost like every Sunday. I went to a private Christian school, and I would say that this is where where I was bullied was the Christian private school.
Right.
And which is kind of, it's not uncommon for that to happen, but for them not to really do anything is, I think that is what kind of like, I don't want to say I never stepped away from the faith, but I definitely didn't trust God fully with like
Yeah.
my life. Um, and so I would say that when I started going into college, and I'm a part of a college ministry here, it's called Midtown Fellowship. And so I'm a part of Midtown College in Columbia, South Carolina. And I've just definitely seen like the Lord just completely move mountains for me. And like, what you were talking about with like divine timing and how like,
Yeah.
your tire was flat, but then that homeless lady like helped you. That is just a great testament of the Lord's provision of your life and how, he has provided so much for me, more than I could even fathom. And I would say that my faith definitely got stronger as I got into college because I was by myself. So I kind of like had to discover who I was because, like we stated before, like we talked about before, I was looking for others to validate me and for others to really and truly like see who I was. I wasn't looking to the Lord for that. I wasn't looking
Yeah.
to him for value and affirmation. I was looking to it. I was looking for it in other people.
Yeah.
And then as I got into college, and I was like, oh wow, like this is so cool, yay. Um, I've had a really like, I don't want to say a rough go with college, but I've encountered a lot of roadblocks in college.
Yeah.
And they could have very easily, I could have given up and been like, okay, throw in the towel, like I'm done. I'm moving back home. I'm just gonna live with my parents for like ever. But like I didn't I didn't do that, and trust me, like I love my parents, but I don't want to do that.
They're probably grateful for that too.
Yeah. Yep. Um but I just like realized honestly how every single roadblock, this is in a song, and I think it's in the Bible somewhere, but it says what the enemy meant for evil, the Lord uses for our good and for his glory. And that's my whole entire college career has been a testament of that, of, whether it was the dance director at USC, belittling me for my dance upbringing, or how it was the friendships that I've lost, and a
Mm.
recent friendship breakup where I realized she had betrayed me and
Yeah.
she was making up, gossiping behind my back, making up rumors about me. And I trusted this person with my life for three
Mm.
years. And then they, they learned who I was for 3 years, and then it's like they flipped a switch. And
Yeah.
this person was also very spiritual, very, oh God, this, oh God, that. But yet she would, behind closed doors, she would treat
Yeah.
people like trash.
Yeah.
And that kind of lit a fire under me because I was like, I don't want people to think that this is what Christianity is, because it's
Yeah.
not that.
Yeah.
It is treating others with love, regardless of what they look like or who they love or what they believe in, because that is what Jesus did. He sat with the sinners, and he sat down with
Mm.
them, and he
Yeah.
shared a meal with them.
Yep.
It's in like Matthew or one of the Gospels where he shared a meal with the sinners, and he, ate with the tax collectors, and he shared his heart with them. He, shared all of who he was with them, and he loves us, and like he loves me, and I want to love others. And one of the really big reasons why I was drawn to the Miss South Carolina Volunteer, and Miss Volunteer America system was not only because of Berkeley, but a bigger reason is because of the SERVE initiative. So, SERVE,
Yeah.
which is the 5 points of the crown, stands for scholarship, education, responsibility, volunteerism, and empowerment. And as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, I'm called to be the hands and feet of Christ. And we do that through serving others and through serving our community and putting others before us. And I love how, and I told Allison DeMarcus, the founder of Miss Volunteer America, this. I said, you put the people before the crowd. Like you make sure that the contestants are okay. And like, yes, of
Yeah.
course, you care about the entertainment side of things, advertising side of things, but and you definitely put on a show. Like that is,
Oh, yeah.
one thing's for sure, like it was amazing.
Yeah.
But you care about the people first, and you care not only about the contestants, but their well-being, and also like the community around you, which is just such a beautiful thing.
It's definitely something that I noticed. I mean, not only the show, I think that was obvious to everyone, but just the general environment, like at those visitation nights or the Queen's Ball, you would see that the women competing were looked after, they were enjoying themselves. And I say this as having interviewed hundreds of pageant contestants. That's not, you don't get that guaranteed. It's actually very rare that you see everyone is happy to be there and enjoying themselves, and they were treated like celebrities. Which I was so grateful for them, because that gives you guys your moment, which you've worked so hard for. I think I just go back to the story you told about your friend who betrayed you. I think it's very easy to, just because someone goes to church every Sunday doesn't mean they're a good person. Yet, on the other hand, that doesn't mean that everyone who believes or professes to believe is bad. It's a very individual journey, I think, that we all need to make. And I often say, like, if someone does, I used to be quite, I don't want to say a vengeful person, but if someone did something bad to me or unfair, I would want to get back at it, because that's just like, they did bad to me, so I want to do bad back to them. But what I found that over the years, those sorts of people, their hatred or whatever it is, it's self-consuming for them. Like sometimes if you look at where they are a year from now, 2 years from now, they've completely disappeared, because that sort of toxic behavior in them has just consumed them completely. And I don't feel it's my place to judge, but it's interesting how each of our journey develops. I want to mention also, you've mentioned fearfully and wonderfully made several times. So that I'm going to imagine that's one of your preferred or favorite verses. And I just want to get your opinion on what the fearfully means, because fear, one of the things that struck me when I was reading the Bible, and it's probably more in the Old Testament, the number of times it was mentioned that one of the secrets to living well was fear of God. And I realized, obviously, it's not be afraid of God, and I have my own opinions as to what I think it meant. But just from your perspective, what does the fear or fearfully made, what does that mean?
To me, that I've never been asked that question. That's like, I've just known fearfully and wonderfully made. But fearfully to me means he created us fearfully, as in he wasn't afraid to create us. But he also created us, I guess, with like, obviously he created us to have value and with worth and
Yeah.
with different, um, attributes and traits, but he also created us wonderfully as well. So we have the fearful aspect of it, which was like he was, proud of us and he created us without fear. But then also, like, wonderfully, like he wonderfully, it was almost an honor to him to create us.
Yeah. It's a question that I like to ponder a lot, because it seems to me that it's mentioned multiple times in the Bible. And if it's mentioned multiple times, it's like there must be a meaning, and I'm trying to get the meaning from it. It's an ongoing process,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah. And I mean, we'll never be able to fully comprehend the Bible, because if we if we did, then we would be God. And unfortunately, we are not. We are not God. And I can say that I would make a terrible God, because I've tried to like take control of my life and be like, no, I'm gonna do this, and it just, completely blew up in my face. So, give God the glory. He's in control, and that's honestly all
Right.
that matters. And just love others as he would love them.
So you have no plans to be God in the near future. This is not on the.
No, I'm not God.
That's.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
I think that
He
might
does
be the
the
first
work
time
through
any.
me.
I think that might be the first time anyone has said that in an interview with me. It's like, I'm not God. It's like, yeah, I'm probably that's a good thing to say. Do you have a favorite translation or transcription of the Bible?
Yeah. So, like a favorite verse, or are you talking about like a
No, I
favorite,
just mean
like,
the general, like, is it King James? Is it
oh,
new?
yeah. I really like the ESV. It's the English Standard Version.
Yeah.
I used to like, I grew up on the NIV, the New International
International
Version.
version. Yeah.
Yeah. And I honestly, I think it's kind of meant for like elementary, younger generations and like younger
Yeah.
ages, but I like the ESV because it like has different wording to it.
Yeah. I tried with the the King James version, and it's just a bit too Shakespearean for me. It's
Yeah,
like
it's theist
I need a
thou.
dictionary for every second word.
Yep, and I will warn you, I have 5% left on my phone, so I can transfer it to my iPad if need be.
Let's see if we can get through these final 10 questions then, because I was about to wrap up. But just really quickly, anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out to?
Yeah. I want to thank Morgan Bonafide, of course, for her name's Morgan, but her Instagram name is Morgan Bonafide. Just for honestly, I mean, she knows how much she means to me. If I if I were to explain everything that she has helped me with, I mean, I did explain, most of the things that she helped me with,
Yeah.
but she also something that struck a chord with me was we have, weekly phone calls or, maybe they're like every 2 weeks. And throughout the whole, I mentioned earlier that I went through a really bad friendship breakup. And throughout that whole entire thing, she was actually like she knew the truth like
Yeah.
of this person, but she just didn't tell me because like she wanted me to realize and like figure it out for myself. Which I honestly like I respect that.
Yeah.
And I just am just so grateful that she stood by my side throughout all of that. And obviously like she's biased towards biased towards me because she knows me and she doesn't know the other person. But yeah, just how she loves people is just truly inspiring and how like she's just so fearless is so inspiring as well. And I also want to shout out Maddie Kaufman, Miss South Carolina volunteer. We actually met during my first year competing in a pageant, at the
Right.
Miss South Carolina America pageant. And she's just been one of my biggest mentors, been one of my biggest cheerleaders. And, yeah, she's just been really and truly, she's very genuine, very authentic. And that's something that I love about her is her authenticity and just how she's real with people.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's definitely a testament of, never give up, always keep going. And then also, Luster Miller, my coach, I've known of her for a pretty long time. She competed in the old pageant system that I used to compete in, but
Yeah.
she has also been one of the people who have just really and truly pushed me to be the best version of myself and to also like not be so hard on myself all the time and to give myself a little bit of grace
Yes.
when needed, of course. And yeah, she's just been, a light and just has helped me so much with not just interview and like the logistics of it, but also like mindset as well.
You want to grab your phone charger so that you don't have anxiety going into the final 10 questions.
Yeah.
Because I just feel it's going to cut out anytime soon, which is fine. We can edit it out.
Yeah.
This is what happens
Yeah.
when we talk.
I
It burns
might
through the
have to
battery.
move somewhere different.
That's all right. You can even just
Um,
hold it if you want. Just hold it and
yeah,
have
I
it
might
plugged
just
into the
honestly
charger.
hold it. Scooting with my chair. This is so funny.
This is the unedited and real version. All right, are
Yes,
we
this
plugged
is
in?
real. Okay, yes.
Okay, all right, here we go. So different background for the final 10. Here we go. Number 1, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word is authenticity. That is, obviously, of course, we've talked a lot about that of being authentic and being genuine and I feel like there's a glare. Okay. Can you see me?
Yeah, it looks like a halo.
I'm an angel. I'm one
There
of
you go.
God's angels. Yeah, but like authenticity, just being genuine and not letting anyone dull your sparkle. That's something that my dad has always told me is like, Marissa, never let anyone dull your sparkle because I've loved sparkle since I was little. So
What is your least favorite word?
Hmm. Least favorite word is probably, I've never really thought of that, honestly. Um, I don't really, I don't know. I'll have to get back to that one because I'm not like super. I'm an optimist, so I focus on the good and I see the glass half full, not half empty. Um, oh, I know, moist.
I was going to suggest that one because that seems to be a very easy word for most
Yeah,
women to hate. That's a
yes.
very popular choice.
Or soggy.
So,
Yeah, soggy is like, ugh, like, ugh.
yeah. Okay, we got that one. Number three, in life, what gets you excited or what turns you on?
Probably coffee. Bringing it full circle, coffee or just like nature. I absolutely love nature. Just seeing the beautiful landscapes, just seeing God's creation and like being with God's creation. Also, I love shoes. Oh, wait, hold on. If you can see,
Yeah.
there we go.
Oh,
Okay, the
right.
shoe.
Okay. You got
Yes. Hmm.
paintings of shoes. Yeah.
Yes. When I was little, I used to try on my mom's high heels and like walk around the house in them. So, and that was when I was like 4. So she should have known I was going to be a pageant queen.
If you watch my interview of Christine Williamson, the national contestant liaison, she did her interview with me basically in her shoe cupboard. And so as soon as the interview starts, you just see must be 30 pairs of like higher tier luxury Louis Vuittons and all this. Like, oh my god, what's going on here? It was a
Well,
very expensive background, but it was perfect for her. Okay, so that's what turns you on. What about what turns you off?
mm, probably inauthenticity or people who are just, oh, I cannot stand small talk. We have this thing at, okay, here's one of the downsides of like Midtown Fellowship is we have this thing called Pass the Peace. And so they say the same thing every single Sunday. And I'm like, why are we're spending 2 minutes talking to each other. Like, what are we going to talk about? And honestly, like, I'm one of those people, by now, I'm an open book. I wear my heart on my sleeve. So I don't really do small talk. That's not me.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what's your trauma? Like, how were you brought up? Like, did you have an eating disorder growing up? What was your, like, I guess, best memory, what was your worst memory, stuff like that.
This is why I would be really bad at pageant interview because I would probably end up, diagnosing the judging panel and working through their trauma because I love that. I also don't like small talk. I just like it's a wait. Like, how's the weather? Like, who cares how the
Who
weather is? Let's
cares?
talk about you. So that's why I do what I do. So I can certainly relate to that. What about what sound or noise do you love?
I love the ocean. So whenever I try to go to sleep at night, when I was little, I used to need to have like nothing on, but now like I'm sure you've heard of like brown noise or white noise.
Yeah,
I have brown noise on, so that is like a lower frequency. No, it's actually a higher frequency than white noise. So,
right.
but it's like louder, if that makes sense. And so I sleep with that. So I love brown noise.
I have a white noise machine. So and it's fascinating how many of the people I've interviewed recently, and they all have like they either play white noise or brown noise, or they have a dedicated machine to help them go to sleep. It's like none of us can deal with complete silence anymore. What sound or noise do you hate?
I do not like trains. I live in Columbia, so there's like so many trains that go by, but I was temporarily living with a couple of my friends because the friendship that I had talked about, she was actually my roommate. So I kind
It's
of had
awkward.
to like step away from that environment. And
Yeah.
the place that I stayed at, you could literally like feel the room shaking when you were trying to go to sleep because the
Right.
train was that close. Like you could look down the window and see it. So that's definitely a sound that I hate. I also don't like alarms, like blaring alarms or like fire alarms or anything. Or like I don't know if you've heard the like end of the world sound, but it's like I can't even describe it, but it's like the purge sound, if you've seen the
Right.
purge series. Yeah,
Yeah.
like that. I'm like, it just freaks me out.
Well, yeah, if the world was ending, it's okay to be freaking out. That makes a lot of sense. Like hearing an air raid siren, it's like, yeah, that doesn't put me to sleep. That's probably quite traumatizing. Number 7, if you could have any superpower, what would you pick and why?
I would love to fly. Can I pick two?
Sure.
Okay. I would love to fly and have super strength. I just think that would be so cool just to like fly anywhere. And I was actually, okay, so I know she doesn't have super strength or fly, but Black Widow, I was actually her for two Halloweens. Hence like the red hair is kind of why I was her, but she
Right.
was also a ballerina.
Yeah.
She was a trained assassin, so like I think that's pretty cool too. So, just like being able to like fight in combat. I guess that's not really a superpower. It's like a learned ability.
But it kind of
But
is. When you're as good as she is, it's kind of
yeah.
beyond human.
Yeah, it's like, come on now. Like, do you have the super soldier serum? Like, does somebody like put that in you? But I also love, okay, I used to like not like her at all, but I really like Captain Marvel. Um,
Yeah. She's a
yeah.
she's a bit of an acquired taste, I think.
Yeah. And I think what was so off-putting about her first was like she seemed arrogant at first, but then I was like,
Yeah.
wait a second. Like she's just very like confident in who she is. And so she's just like flying and like punching through things and that's just it's so cool.
I think the problem with her when she was introduced, it was almost she was introduced like as a plot device. I think
Yeah.
that was the issue. Whereas I think
Hmm.
Black Widow was fighting the Winter Soldier back when he was evil. When he
Yeah.
came good, he was a lot weaker, but was at the height of his powers. And so she didn't have any. She was doing all these things like deflecting grenades, jumping off, bridges. So, but it's interesting you pick her because she has neither the ability to fly nor super strength, which is why
Yeah.
she's so amazing. So it's weird that the things that you love, you picked a character who has neither of them.
Yeah, it's like it's all in here and it's also like, her physical strength too. So
Yeah.
that's just so cool.
Should have a separate interview about Marvel from the sounds of it. Number 8, what job other than your own would you most like to attempt?
So this is also going with the Black Widow thing. I would
Please
love
don't
to
say
be
trained assassin.
no, 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 no. I would love to be a CIA agent or like an FBI agent and like totally like, kick butt all the time and be like, justice is served, and just like, I don't know, there's just something about superheroes which I love. I think it's like how it's unattainable, but
Yeah.
at the same time it is. Um, and so just being in the CIA would be like so cool and just like busting people, but then also like giving justice to those who deserve it. And then also like giving people a voice, so to speak.
One of the women I interviewed recently afterwards told me she works for the FBI. She couldn't let anyone know that. It was so cool when I found out. It's like I never would have guessed that, but that is so cool. Not CIA, FBI, but that's close. What
Yeah,
about
CIA is more fighting. So that's and I'm
you?
like
You
very physical.
you're going to have an interesting time if you're wearing your pageant crown and sash, and then you're busting people. It's like Miss Congeniality, but on steroids here.
Yep.
So that would be quite something to see. There should be a movie in that. Number 9, what job would you definitely not like to attempt?
I would not want to be well, I don't think I've said this yet, but I'm a barista. And
No, you didn't
yep,
say that, but the coffee thing that makes sense
yep,
now.
that makes sense. Yeah, so I honestly, I don't think I would want to be a hotel manager. I would have to like manage everything and just I'm sure have you seen Gilmore Girls?
Heard of it? I haven't watched it. No.
Okay. Well, one of the main characters, she's a hotel manager and she just always seems to be like in a high stress mode and like working just
Yep.
off of like anxiety and stuff. And it's like you constantly like have Okay, there we go. You constantly have to like deal with people and like their problems and just like make sure like they're comfortable and like everything's right. And something with me is I don't really have the best bedside manner because I'm very like, oh, I can do it myself. I'm very independent. So like when somebody can't do something for themselves, I'm like, come on. Like you can get up and go get that thing. Like I know you can. I believe in you. So probably maybe a nurse too is something that I would hate because I don't like blood. Even though I can watch the Vampire Diaries and like
Yeah.
other shows without like feeling weird or queasy about it. I just don't really like hospitals.
Hey. All right, that was comprehensive, and I'm not surprised you don't like blood. That seems to be a recurring motif amongst pageant girls. Final question: if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I would like to hear him say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And I know that heaven does exist. And that's just I just cannot wait for that time and that day to come just for me to just see him and honestly, like, ask him so many questions of my life, and I don't know I mean, revealed in in Revelation, it talks about, like, heaven and, like, the gates of gold and, like, the streets of gold, but we don't know what it is because we haven't been there yet, and so for me it would be well done, my goodness, faithful servant, and just him completely like embracing me and hugging me as well.
Perfect. Well, Marissa, we made it. The on 5%
Yay!
battery or less, we made it.
Yep.
Thank you so much for coming on. Just in terms of the Miss South Carolina volunteer pageant, when is it being held? Just in case people want to get tickets or watch a live stream, if there is one. Do you have any of those details?
Yeah, so it's on July 26th, and we don't know exactly what the time is yet, but it's at Twitchell Auditorium in Converse College at Spartanburg, South Carolina. And I'm pretty sure there's a live stream, but I'm not sure. But I'll definitely like put that on my socials whenever I get the information.
Perfect. Well, if you shoot it my way, if you remember, I'll share it as well, because I'm going to
Okay.
try and spy on as many of the state pageants as I can, see if I can see the live streams. But I'll keep you on the line for just a second, Marissa, whilst I hang out with the audience. But thanks everyone for watching, and we will speak to you next time.